The 3 a.m. call is the one every child of an aging parent dreads, the one that rips you out of a dead sleep and shoves ice water into your veins before you've even processed a single word. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, a furious, vibrating insect, and the caller ID just said Mom. My heart didn't just drop, it evaporated. Maya, her voice was this thin, reedy thing like a thread about to snap. It wasn't her normal, slightly raspy voice. This was pure, uncut terror. Mom, what's wrong? Are you okay? He's in the house, Maya, she whispered, and a choked sob followed. I can hear him, he's walking around downstairs. I locked my bedroom door, but I can hear the floorboards creaking. I was already out of bed, pulling on jeans over my pajamas with one hand, my phone pressed hard against my ear. I'm calling 911 right now, Mom. Stay on the line with me, just keep quiet, I'm on my way. The drive to her house is a 10-minute trip I made in what felt like 30 seconds. Every red light was a personal insult, every empty street a new landscape of horror my mind was painting. When I screeched to a halt in her driveway, a police cruiser was already there, its lights painting silent, screaming strokes of red and blue across the front of her tidy little suburban home. Two officers were on the porch looking professional, but if I'm being honest, a little bored. They'd already done a sweep. The house was pristine, not a scratch on the locks, all the windows shut tight from the inside. They found my mother, Alara, in her bedroom, wrapped in her favorite floral robe, looking utterly bewildered. She looked at me, then at the officers, with this hazy, sleep-drunk confusion. A phone call, she said, her voice back to its normal timbre. Honey, no, I was having a terrible nightmare. I'm so sorry, officers, she must have misunderstood. I just stared at her. The police were patient, kind. They used phrases like night terrors and vivid dreams. They gently suggested that maybe a chat with her doctor would be a good idea. They treated me like a well-meaning but hysterical daughter. I felt my face burning with a mixture of embarrassment and a cold, hard knot of certainty in my gut. This wasn't a dream. I heard the fear in her voice. After they left, I stood on the porch with her, the cool night air doing nothing to calm my still hammering heart. She kept apologizing, patting my arm, telling me to go home and get some sleep. I was just deflated, angry at the world, at aging, at my own damn panic. I finally gave in, hugged her goodnight, and turned to let myself out. My hand was reaching for the doorknob when the porch light caught it. It was small, drawn in what looked like a black Sharpie, an inverted smiley face. A tiny, perfect arc of a frown with two dots for eyes, my mom's doodle, her signature. The little mark she'd been putting on letters, on the corner of recipes, on the margins of books for 50 years. A little piece of her personality, her private joke with the world. And seeing it there, on the cold brass of her front doorknob, felt like a violation. It felt like a threat. My blood ran absolutely cold. It wasn't a nightmare. Someone was here and they knew her. I pushed the door shut, my hand trembling so badly I could barely turn the lock. Inside, the house was quiet, smelling faintly of lavender potpourri and old books, the smell of my entire childhood. Alara was already in the kitchen, putting on the kettle, acting as if the whole ordeal was a silly little episode we could wash away with a cup of chamomile tea. Mom, I said, my voice low and urgent, the doorknob, did you see it? She glanced over, a placid smile on her face. See what, dear? The drawing, the smiley face. Your smiley face. She chuckled, a soft, dismissive sound. Oh, for heaven's sake, Maya, it's probably just some neighborhood kids, you know how they are. Don't get yourself worked up over nothing. She turned back to the counter, her movements calm and measured, as if she were handling a perfectly normal Tuesday morning instead of the aftermath of a terrifying 3 a.m. phone call. But I knew that wasn't a kid's prank. The lines were too deliberate, the placement too precise, it was a message. My mind started racing, replaying the officer's words, my mother's confusion. Was this some kind of sick game? Was someone trying to make her think she was losing her mind? I spent the next hour walking through the house, my eyes scanning every surface, every corner. I felt like a trespasser in my own history, looking for signs of corruption. Everything was in its place, yet nothing felt right. The quiet was too loud, the orderliness felt staged. In the living room, I noticed her pill organizer on the coffee table. I picked it up. The little plastic boxes for each day were filled with the usual assortment of vitamins and blood pressure medication, but there was a new one, a small, pale blue capsule for sleep. What's this one? I asked, walking back into the kitchen. Oh, that's a new herbal thing, she said breezily. Owen from next door recommended it. He used to be a pharmacist, you know. Said it works wonders and has no side effects. Owen, overly friendly, slightly too helpful Owen. He'd lived next door for 20 years, a fixture of the neighborhood. He was always bringing over her mail, offering to mow her lawn. He seemed harmless. But now his name landed like a stone in my gut. I checked the garden next. Nothing was missing, but the little hand trowel she always kept by the rose bushes was lying near the back fence, caked in fresh mud. The gate, which she meticulously locked every night, was slightly ajar. It wasn't proof of anything, but it was another little tear in the fabric of normalcy. I felt so utterly alone, adrift in a sea of my mother's placid denial and my own spiraling anxiety. I couldn't go back to the police, they already thought I was a hysteric. I couldn't talk to my mom, she was convinced it was all in her head. So I did what any desperate, confused person does in the 21st century. I pulled out my phone, went to a forum where people share their unsettling experiences, and started typing. I poured out the entire story, the frantic phone call, the dismissive cops, the strange new pills, and the detail that haunted me the most. The small, black, inverted smiley face on the doorknob. I posted it and immediately felt a wave of regret. What was I doing, airing my family's terrifying, private business to a bunch of strangers on the internet? I expected ridicule, accusations of making it all up for attention. Instead, the comments that started trickling in were insightful. People asked questions I hadn't even thought to ask myself. They saw patterns where I only saw chaos. One user, username Circuit Sleuth or something, wrote, "The symbol isn't the weapon, it's the message. The weapon is making your mom doubt herself. You need to look at her past, not just her present." That line hit me like a ton of bricks, her past. I went up to the attic, a place I hadn't been in years. It was dusty and hot, filled with the ghosts of forgotten hobbies and past lives. I was looking for her old art school portfolios, her sketchbooks. I found them in a large, warped cardboard box labeled Ilara College. I sat on the dusty floorboards, flipping through pages of charcoal drawings and watercolor studies. And there it was on nearly every page, the little inverted smiley. In her youth, it was crisp, confident, almost joyful in its melancholy. It was a statement. Then I dug deeper, pulling out family photo albums from the last decade. I started looking at the backs of the pictures, where she would always write the date and a little note, always ending with the doodle. The change was subtle at first, but undeniable. Around 5 years ago, the lines of the smiley started getting shaky. The little eyes were sometimes just angry jabs of the pen. The curve of the frown was deeper, more exaggerated. In a photo from last Christmas, one of us all smiling in ugly sweaters, the doodle on the back was barely recognizable. It was jagged, pressed so hard into the photo paper that it was almost a scar. It looked less like a quirky signature and more like a silent scream. I sat there in the suffocating heat of the attic, surrounded by 50 years of my mother's life documented in drawings and photos. The story they told was terrifying. This wasn't a new development. Whatever was happening to her, whatever darkness had crept into our lives, hadn't started with a phone call last night. It had been growing for years, right under my nose, hidden on the back of a photograph, disguised as a sad little smile. My mind immediately jumped to the most obvious and, frankly, the ugliest possibility. My uncle, my mom's brother, Finn. Their relationship had been strained for years, a slow-motion car crash of financial dependency and simmering resentment. Finn was a dreamer who never quite woke up, always chasing the next guaranteed investment that would leave him deeper in debt. His primary source of funding, Alara. Until about 6 months ago, she'd finally cut him off. He'd called her, screaming, calling her a selfish old woman who was going to die on a pile of money she couldn't take with her. I'd been there for the aftermath, holding my mom while she cried, not from the anger but from the betrayal. Finn knew about the doodle. He'd grown up with it, probably mocked it as kids. He knew she took sleeping pills. He knew the layout of the house better than anyone. And he had a motive clear as day. If Alara was declared mentally incompetent, he, as her only brother, could make a play for control of her estate. It was a vile, disgusting thought, and it made perfect, horrible sense. I drove to his apartment the next day. I didn't call first. I wanted to see his face. He opened the door looking hungover and annoyed, a crumpled polo shirt hanging off his frame. "Maya, what the hell are you doing here?" "I didn't waste time with pleasantries. Were you at Mom's house the other night?" He blinked, a flicker of something, surprise, guilt, crossing his face before the usual mask of defensive anger slammed down. "What are you talking about?" "I haven't seen her in weeks. She won't take my calls." "Someone was in her house, Finn. Someone is trying to make her think she's going crazy. Someone left her doodle on the front doorknob." I watched him closely, looking for a crack in the facade. He just scoffed, shaking his head with a pitying look that made my blood boil. "Oh, for Christ's sake, her doodle. Maya, she's an old woman. She's probably forgetting things, getting confused. It happens. Maybe she drew it herself and forgot." And she was terrified. She called me at 3 a.m. whispering that someone was walking around downstairs. "It's called a nightmare, Maya," he said, his voice rising. Look, I know you want to believe she's the same sharp woman she's always been, but we have to be realistic. Maybe it's time we started looking at some assisted living options, a place where she'll be safe. We could sell the house, make sure she's comfortable. And there it was, the house, the money. I saw the whole disgusting plan laid out. Gaslight her, create a narrative of senility, get her declared incompetent, and cash in. You're a real piece of work, you know that, I said, my voice shaking with rage. I'm being practical, he shot back. Something you've never been, you're too emotional about this. You're letting her delusions get to you. I left then, slamming the door behind me. The confrontation had solved nothing. It just left me feeling dirtier, more isolated. He was twisting it, using my love for my mother as a weapon against me, painting me as the crazy one. I drove away with tears of frustration blurring my vision. He was so convincing in his denial. For a terrifying second, I even let myself wonder if he was right. Was I the one who was losing touch with reality? Was I seeing a conspiracy where there was only the sad, simple decline of a woman I loved? It started with the pills. Finn's accusations had planted a seed of doubt, a horrible nagging voice that whispered, what if he's right? So I decided to rule out every possibility. I went back to my mom's house with the excuse of helping her organize her medicine cabinet. While she was in the other room, I took one of the new blue sleeping capsules Owen had given her. It just felt wrong. The two halves of the capsule didn't seem to fit together perfectly. On a desperate whim, I drove to a private lab in the city, one that does anonymous substance testing, and paid a ridiculous rush fee. Then I went to an electronics store and bought the smallest nanny cam I could find. It was shaped like a USB charger. I plugged it into the wall socket in my mom's living room, the one with a clear view of the front door and the hallway. I told her it was a new kind of air freshener. She didn't even question it. The lab called me back this afternoon. The technician sounded grim. The capsule contained the correct herbal supplement, yes, but it also contained a trace amount of a powerful, fast-acting dissociative hallucinogen. Something that could induce incredibly vivid, terrifying waking nightmares, followed by periods of memory loss and confusion. My blood turned to ice. This wasn't just gaslighting. This was chemical warfare. I raced home, my hands shaking, and pulled up the live feed from the camera on my laptop. I fast-forwarded through hours of my mom pottering around, watching TV, reading a book. Nothing. Then at 2:47 a.m. I saw it. The front door lock turned slowly, silently. The door opened, and Owen, her kind, helpful neighbor Owen, stepped inside. He wasn't wearing a mask, he was smiling. He moved through the downstairs of her house with a quiet, confident familiarity. He didn't steal anything, he just walked. He'd pause, listen at the bottom of the stairs, and then intentionally scuff his foot on the hardwood floor, just loud enough to be heard from upstairs. He was performing. He was creating the sound effects for her nightmare. After about 10 minutes, he went to the front door, pulled a black Sharpie from his pocket, and leaned down. He carefully, almost lovingly, drew the inverted smiley face on the doorknob. Then he let himself out, locking the door behind him. I felt like I was going to be sick. He had a key. Of course he had a key. She'd given him 1 year ago in case of an emergency. He wasn't breaking in, he was just letting himself in. Owen, the retired pharmacist who knew exactly what drugs to use. Owen, the friendly neighbor who had spent years building a foundation of trust he was now using to systematically dismantle her sanity. He wanted everyone, me, the police, her own brother, to think she was losing her mind. He was positioning himself to be the concerned neighbor, the one who would eventually have to step in, the one who could be granted power of attorney over the confused old woman next door. He wasn't just trying to drive her crazy, he was trying to replace me. My first instinct was to call my mom, to scream down the phone that she needed to get out of the house right now. But I stopped myself. What would I say? That the man next door, her friend of 20 years, was a monster drugging her and staging break-ins? She wouldn't believe me. She would think I was the one who had finally cracked. Owen had built his fortress of lies too well. I had the video, the lab results. I couldn't just run in screaming, I had to be smart. I called the police. Not the 911 dispatcher, but the non-emergency line. I asked for one of the officers who had responded to the initial call, the younger one who had at least looked at me with a flicker of sympathy. I told him I had irrefutable, time-stamped video evidence of a B&E and potential poisoning, and I was emailing it to him as we spoke. The change in his tone was immediate. The bored, placating cop was gone, replaced by a man who was all business. They didn't use the sirens this time. 2 cruisers pulled up silently on the street. I watched from my car, parked a block away, my heart feeling like it was going to beat its way out of my chest. They went to Owen's door first. I saw the lights flick on inside, the brief argument, and then they brought him out in handcuffs. He looked so small and pathetic, just a confused old man in a bathrobe. He wasn't a criminal mastermind, he was just a lonely, greedy predator. It's over. The police just left my mom's house for the second time. They found everything. In Owen's basement, they found a box with more of the tampered capsules, a logbook detailing my mom's routines, and a whole notepad filled with pages of him practicing her inverted smiley face. Over and over, like a child learning to write, he was trying to perfect it. They also found a spare key to our house, the one I mentioned. It was on his main keychain, right next to his own house key, like he belonged there. My mom is safe, physically at least, but the psychological damage, I don't know if that will ever heal. When the police explained it all to her, gently, patiently, she just crumbled. The trust she had in her own mind, in her own home, in the kindness of a neighbor, has been completely shattered. She keeps looking at me and asking, but none of it was real, was it? The footsteps, the fear. How do I explain that the fear was real, even if the ghost was a man she trusted? She's going to be staying with me for a while. We have a long road of therapy and healing ahead of us. I was so focused on the family drama, on the obvious suspect, that I never saw the real threat right next door. The quiet, unassuming evil that wears a friendly face. That little inverted smiley face used to be a symbol of my mom's quirky strength. Now it just feels like a scar. A permanent reminder of how close I came to losing her, not to a monster in the dark, but to a smiling man in the light.